Hi, my name is Lyle Murphy, the founder of the Alternative to Med Center. Today we're actually doing some shoot from a new studio, and I like the backdrop. It feels good. Hopefully it comes out great. Today we're going to be answering tough questions about stopping antipsychotics. And now these are questions that actually have been posed by our viewers on YouTube. And you guys have a lot of questions, honestly, and we're trying to compress them down into a few that may be more relevant to a lot of people, or in times very specific questions that one person in a million might be asking, but they're probably not going to get an answer somewhere else out there. So here are the questions. Question 1. Can you do a video about people who got put on antipsychotics who were not psychotic and were intentionally misdiagnosed? And what do antipsychotics do to sane people? You know, this actually is very worthy of its own standalone video because they actually do many of the same things. This question, one thing about it that kind of throws me is the intentional part, intentionally misdiagnosed. So I'm going to imagine that I'm an angel and I fell out of heaven and I landed into a psychiatrist's office and they tied me down and gave me meds. Those medications, by and large, are going to do very similar things to that person as they would someone who actually was having symptomatology before they ended up in that office. Maybe not to the same degree, but let's say I am not predisposed to drinking, but I have a partner who drinks a lot, and I drink every day with them because it's how we socialize, let's say. And then one day I decide I need to go be with the parents or whatever, and I decide I'm not going to drink that day. Am I going to have a hangover? Yeah, you're going to have a hangover. So you will probably, to some degree, have psychosis coming off of these medications, even though you did not have psychosis when you were put on those medications. Question number 2. After stopping Risperidone, which is also known as Risperdal, I had severe depression. After 3 months, I'm starting to feel okay, but will I ever really feel like myself again? Is there a supplement or tool I can use? Okay, so the highlights of what this person is asking is after 3 months, they still have depression. And know that depression is not a very normative symptom of coming off of an antipsychotic like Risperidone. It usually is exactly the opposite. You go through a bit of a manic episode and you stay manic until you get through the withdrawal. So this is sort of the inversion of that. So I don't want people who are coming off of Risperidone or another antipsychotic to believe that this is the formula for them, because this is usually the formula that would make the withdrawal from antipsychotics much worse. So I don't want the average person coming off of antipsychotics to think this is the formula for them, because it probably would be exactly the wrong thing to do. All right, so to lift depression, I mean, the neurochemistry is very much like a teeter-totter in a way. As complicated as it is, there's things that make the teeter-totter go this way, and there's things that make the teeter-totter go this way. And if you do something to this side that makes the teeter-totter go this way, then you're going to have the other side of it go like this. Does that make sense? So, here's your mind. If you do something to slow it down, you're going to do something to speed up your digestion. Yeah. So, this person's going to slow, if that's what they're saying. They're depressed and life is lackluster. So the formula for that would be things like DLPA, which are also known as phenylalanine. This is a precursor to tyrosine. So DLPA is kind of like the soft shot for your dopamine, and tyrosine is more direct shot for your dopamine. And then SAMe, if you guys know what that is, it's a methyl donor that will donate a methyl group to help methylate tyrosine into L-dopa and dopamine. Okay, so if you're wanting to get your reward back, you're wanting to kind of target that neurochemical pathway and the cofactors and such in that. So This person may want to combine also a 50 milligrams of vitamin B6 with that to get the cofactors, to get the methyl donor, to get that thing going, and do that in the morning, not at night, and ease into it slowly. Because someone who has come off of an antipsychotic, they're very different than the normative population. And this population gets misunderstood a lot if they, let's say, end up in a naturopath's office. Naturopath is usually treating people who have had maybe a bit of a commitment to natural things, or coming from a physical place where they had a heart problem or whatever, and coming off medication things may not be as familiar it may not be their population they're the most familiar with. So when you are easing into this because you're treating yourself for depression after coming off an antipsychotic, you want to tiptoe out into this water. Don't just go dive in. So, instead of 1,500 milligrams of tyrosine, try with maybe 500 milligrams of phenylalanine in the morning and see how that goes. And then as you're finding that's okay and you're still sleeping and you're not getting irritable and you're not having thoughts that you can't stop, then potentially bridge in a little bit of SAMe, 50 milligrams of SAMe in the morning. See how that works. And also exercise, get your oxygen going. Maybe if you're already taking the antipsychotic formula we suggest, then do that as well. And I think that looks a lot like question 3, so I'm not going to get into the normative antipsychotic formula, as I'm probably going to be answering that in the next question. So, all right, question number 3. Are there any supplements to help the brain recover during the antipsychotic withdrawal period? There are things that can be given during the antipsychotic withdrawal period that make it actually work, and they are participating in recovery of the brain as well at the same time. So usually what an antipsychotic does, like the fundamental aspect of an antipsychotic, there are differences between some of these antipsychotics, but most of them target dopamine. So here's dopamine, right? So it's saying you cannot come over here, right? Where, let's say it's a person that's looking for an iPhone, the iPhone 16, 17, or 28, whatever the current thing is that people are looking for. And over here are where the iPhones are. Okay, so what happens on this side is you're blocking this dopamine thing, right? And what happens on this side is it just builds up more receptors. Like, it just gets more and more and more and more liable that this little bit of dopamine that comes through is going to actually excite something, right? So that's called neuroadaptation. You put in something that blocks a reward neurochemical. Also, it's not just a reward neurochemical, it's actually a survival neurochemical. My ability to do this now, hopefully you can see this, but my eyes are closed right now. I'm not looking. For me to be able to do that requires proprioception that lies outside of my visual field. In other words, like the position of my head and neck and where I am in space to be able to do that. That transmission is what keeps me from falling off a curb in front of a bus, right? So your body's going to try to survive, right? In order to make that thing happen for you to keep you alive. That's kind of like the overarching command is survive, keep this living organism alive. Even if you don't want to be alive, you really can't stop breathing on your own. You know what I mean? Your organism is going to want to keep you alive. So then what happens when you take away that dopamine, right? Or you take away that drug, and you've got these excessively volatile receptors on this side. They're like, waiting for, for that iPhone to happen. And all of a sudden you give it, the chance for overstimulation is going to be extreme, right? You're giving a near normal amount of dopamine to these receptors that are very, very hypervolatile. And that is going to look like mania, psychosis, all of those things. So it's kind of like if you had, and I give this analogy a lot, like you walk up to the top of 10 flights of stairs, you have to walk back down those same 10 flights of stairs if you want to go to your car. Yeah? Well, there's a physics involved in that, because if you jump off the roof, what's going to happen? You're going to get hurt, right? We all know that as kids. We fell off of something, we got hurt. But we don't necessarily comprehend, unless we've been told, that there's the same physics that apply to coming off these medications. You can't just jump off of an antipsychotic and expect things to go well. You have to walk down the same stairs that you walked up to get there, and you do it slowly enough so that you are not hurting yourself on the way down. So some of the supplements that may help with that are going to be the cofactors that are breaking down that dopamine, so the amount of dopamine that's hitting those receptors is not quite as impactful. And that would be vitamin C, niacin, like 500 milligrams of niacin, and some lithium orotate and tryptophan. On the website, actually, the Alternative Med Center website, there's usually a page or a video, there's a page basically that deals with a category of medication you're on. If you're talking about antipsychotic withdrawal, if you go on the menu part and you drop down and you look at medications, you'll see antipsychotics and you'll click on antipsychotic withdrawal. Usually that's the best video rather than Risperdal withdrawal or Latuda withdrawal or whatever. That's going to really speak to what the supplements are. And there's also another page on the website called Antipsychotic Alternatives, and that really gives you a download of the different supplements that we use in order to get people off antipsychotics and the dosing and how you do it, because there is a bit of a mechanism behind how much vitamin C to take, how much niacin to take, and how much lithium orotate is appropriate, and I think you might find it more on there. But generally, it's vitamin C to tolerance. In other words, the point where you start having diarrhea is the point where you back down. Niacin, you're going to have a flush that goes along with it. You need to be prepared for that. It's going to make your skin feel as if you have sunburn. And lithium orotate, I didn't really want to put that finger down, but lithium orotate is going to be about 5 milligrams, maybe 20 milligrams. Lithium is really a cofactor for the breakdown of dopamine. Like they give lithium in these very toxic amounts to try to help people not be manic. I can't give you medical advice, and I'm not giving you medical advice, but generally speaking, in the experience of the world, even in places where there's just more lithium in the groundwater, the chances of schizophrenia are greatly reduced, and manic behavior and homicidality and suicidality are actually lowered just from parts per million. So the lithium that is in lithium orotate is not really a prescription, it's a naturally occurring substance. Right, and it's not. The difference in the prescribing of naturally occurring elemental lithium and lithium carbonate, like the difference in the lithium carbonate between the neuroprotective level and the neurotoxic level is so narrow. You have to take blood tests to make sure you're not destroying your kidneys, so to get the positive effects from it. So these are the informed consents that you may have not been given in certain ways, and take the information and do with it what feels right to you, run it around, and get some other perspectives on it. All right, question number 4. Can you kindly answer, this is a very difficult question, I remember. Okay, got to put my thinking cap on here. Can you kindly answer a question about non-specific psychoses and ADSP? Okay, so what they're asking in this very long question sounds a lot like you've got autism spectrum disorder with the normative psychosis diagnosis, which is, strangely enough, an atypical psychosis. So here's this group of people that have atypical psychosis with their autism spectrum, primary diagnosis. And then over here, you've got another group of people that have a schizophrenic diagnosis, and they still have autism, which is more of a normal psychosis. And then you have autism that has that does not demonstrate psychosis. Okay, so their question is, in these groups, what are the success rates of coming off of antipsychotics for these particular patients? Yeah, so there's a general rule about this. As I like when I'm evaluating someone, one of the entry differentials is, does it happen all the time or does it happen some of the time? Whatever the thing is, right? In the realm of psychosis, if it happens all the time versus coming and going, the all the time psychosis is much different than something that comes and goes. If it works some of the time, it ain't broken. You know what I mean? If it's working some of the times, there's something that's not broken. And when you can identify what that thing is that's throwing it out of gear and causing it to be symptomatic, then usually the thing just sort of augments into them being the kind of actually high-functioning persona that they could be in the world rather than a train wreck. So now applying this to the diagnosis, the success rate of people having atypical psychosis, if that psychosis is presenting as like it's here and they're hallucinating and they're not able to actually be very well oriented in the reality, and then at other times they are, that is going to do, and I don't work with autism patients that much. I haven't worked with true autism patients. I've worked with the Asperger's and the other patients, but so this is more just based on an understanding of how the nervous system and the certain things work. So I'm giving you a non-actual witness impression of what I might think might happen here. And if you're, in my experience, in direct experience, if you've been seeing people who are psychotic sometimes and there's not psychotic sometimes, their ability to get off of the antipsychotic and have a degree of permanence around that and be okay off the antipsychotic is far better than people who have an all-the-time type of psychosis. And honestly, I see a lot of people diagnosed as schizophrenic. My definition is very, very cut and dry. If they're schizophrenic, in my definition, it's not the DSM-5 definition, but if they're schizophrenic, it means they're having psychosis all the time. If they're having psychosis some of the times, then they're schizoaffective. This population, I can do miracles with, or the innate can do miracles with, and I can help notice the miracles. And this population is very stubborn as far as like they come off the medication and immediately go into their college track and get a bachelor's or master's degree in something. Not often. If a person's hearing voices and it's constant, and they've been living on the couch in the basement of their parents' house and have not, they don't have any foibles like smoking pot all the time or the things that usually lead to psychosis, and we're talking organic brain something or other, then generally the goal is what is their highest quality of life, and to aim for that and maybe let go of the stigma of like how many meds are there and how many meds are there not, and what produces the highest quality of life for this individual. And the people that have not experienced psychosis that were on the spectrum, how well did they do coming off of antipsychotics? I would say, it really depends on the person. I would say that there's probably more of a variation in this population than there would be in whatever we're calling normal, but have they had normal sexual interactions? Are they overly attached to some religious construct? Some of these things that are beautiful in the world can actually be very difficult for us when we're coming off of an antipsychotic. So it just depends on how they're relating to the world, really. But I would see hope for that population for sure. If they weren't psychotic and they're on an antipsychotic because it was meant to help them with certain symptoms they were experiencing on the spectrum, then I would think coming off of that, if they do it in the right way, could be highly successful. All right, next question. Someone I know was given Seroquel on a PRN basis, a low dose. Is that wise? Well, I think it's probably more wise than long-term. Like some of these antipsychotics, given on, from my opinion, given on a PRN level, I'm sure everybody knows I'm not really a big fan of medications, especially antipsychotics, right? But the real thing that happens with antipsychotics isn't that, I took it one time, so suddenly I'm bound to this earth forever and I'll never fly on my angel wings again. It's not like that for most people. It's you adapt to that medication in a way that is very, very difficult. It's like a Gordian knot. It's like you just untying that thing can be very difficult over a period of time. The neuroadaptation that happens to dopamine when you put something in there that restricts it is far past, in my observation, or my opinions on the observations I've had, than benzodiazepines, than heroin, than alcohol, than any other class of medication. Yeah, because when you go crazy, everybody says, you need to be back on them medications right now, right? And usually it's because the person came off of them too fast, But it's really, really, really hard to even come off of them slowly because the person that's coming off them slowly may not be in their right mind for a period of time that's actually happening. And they need somebody that actually knows what the hell they're doing to watch this thing and make sure. And it's just it's like trying to do a Olympic level ice skating move on ice that's really thin, and you're not an Olympic ice skater. That's why I don't like antipsychotics that much. But it's really a phenomenon that happens after you've taken them for a while and you've had that neuroadaptation. If someone's taking them just to go to sleep, and it's a knockout punch and it's working, and that's what they need because blah, blah, blah. Well, there's probably better things in an antipsychotic like Seroquel to do it, but so wise, is it wise? Low dose. Oh, so back to this. The low dose, I've had people respond on the Seroquel pages that they've been taking low dose Seroquel, 25, 50, maybe even 100 milligrams, and have done that for a long time and they feel fine. I'm not discounting their experience. I'm not. I don't see people that, first of all, I don't have people come to me and go, oh, doc, or, oh, Lyle, my medication's working great for me. Let's get off of it. I see all the other stuff, right? So naturally I'm biased. But I see online other people's experiences and it's like, oh, my life was this living hell at this dosage level. And then I see people talking like, oh, I've been at this dosage level and, things are working. So I think it's very dose dependent, really, and I also think it has to do with how much of it are you taking and how long are you taking it for. So I would say it's reasonably okay, but I would encourage you to find different choices because, does that nail really need a sledgehammer? Can I knock it in with a little rock, or can I hit it with a plastic bottle and not wreck the table with a sledgehammer? You know what I mean? All right, next question. What is your opinion of SPRAVATO? I think I'm pronouncing that right. What I've seen is that, in other people, is that these disassociatives, or whatever you want to call ketamine, for those of you who don't know, SPRAVATO is the nasal version of ketamine. It's hard for me to render an opinion on it because I've never tried it, I have seen and heard patients and have even had prescribing staff that have been like, hey, that thing really knocked me out of my major depressive disorder. There's this groove that I was in and it thrusted me out of it. And so I would say, okay, that sounds great. That sounds amazing. And I've also seen people who, instead of the drug being the mechanism for their getting on a different track of thinking, the drug becomes their new track of thinking, and then they get stuck on the Hail Mary shot that it may have been, and they're, I don't know, I'm thinking about some fellow named J.P. Sears that did this YouTube video on ayahuasca. He's like, I've never, I'm not addicted to these ceremonies, I do them 2 or 3 times a week, and and it's a joke. It really is a joke. I mean, I honor these ceremonial uses of what could potentially be sacred medicinals, and how is it really getting ushered in? Like somebody who's really on the fence of living or dying, like they're suicidal, and ain't nothing seemed to penetrate that. Nothing. Then showing them that there might be a God bigger than the God that forsaken them might be the thing. You have to really feel into that one. But if we're gonna do these things, create a container of safety with people who know what they're doing, have taken people through this journey, that know that bardo of from here to that place where you go and how to get back. And I would think that's, for people that are stable, I'll try anything once. I would try it to see where it goes. We actually had a doctor that was doing ketamine journeys with some of the patients, and I almost signed up, but I was busy, and I'm got too much going on, and I'm like, oh God, where am I? I never got a chance to get around to it. So maybe one day in the future I'll have a little more direct knowledge on that. For right now, sorry, this is as good as it's going to get. Question number 7. How do you reverse tardive dyskinesia? Unfortunately, let me start like this. When you say reverse, if a person has just started developing symptoms of tardive dyskinesia, then the you have to stop the medication as quickly and safely as possible. Hopefully your prescriber, you might need something really important for this, because coming off of an antipsychotic, if you just got put on it and you're starting to have tardive dyskinesia symptoms, you probably almost need to be inpatient to do this. And hopefully the people around you are smart enough to pick up that this is actually what's happening. You're developing tardive dyskinesia, and that they need to stop that medication right away, because the first intervention is stop the antipsychotic. And for most people, that is going to be right away. For some people, that could make things come tragically worse, and they need to still taper that medication and bridge over to something else, hopefully in an inpatient setting. Let's see, where's the rest of this question? Okay, so now if you've got tardive dyskinesia, you've already came off the medication, and it's a calling card of you doing antipsychotics, well, I have not treated that. I've not had a successful, we're short-term treatment. You know, what I do is 8 weeks, 12 weeks. So the long-term where these things go is somewhat anecdotal. There's some fellows over in Gilder that had crossed the flaming swamp of Galilee. You know, like there's these sort of urban legend things that live out there that you know, and there's some stuff in the literature too, but it's not that promising. I know the orthomolecular giant, one of the ones I learned some things from along the way. His name was Dr. Cunyon, and he was a big proponent of using manganese, and I guess he had, you know, tardive dyskinesia patients that he worked with. Unfortunately, he has crossed over at this point. At a very ripe old age, the guy lived well until the end. It was great. He was a smart cookie. There was a meta-analysis that evaluated the effect of ginkgo biloba, and they found, actually they were prescribing it for various attributes of the psychosis, and found that there was some benefit to the tardive dyskinesia. Then there's Botox. You know, I don't know anything about how that's going to work or make it better or worse, but, you know, paralyzing the muscles that are caught, you know, that are making the weird tics. The recurring tics, I don't want to judge it, it's making the tics that are not wanted. And I don't know how that goes for people. I just, you know, some of this stuff I'm just learning and reading just as you are. And but I do know stopping the medications is the primary thing. And we have seen people drifting off into that way that we got involved in, and then they didn't end up that way. Or they had akathisia. The folks out there that know what I'm talking about know that's horrible too, not quite as bad as tardive dyskinesia, but you know, usually what this all is a product of you're having a toxic reaction to the medication in the first place. So of course you stop the medication, and then you hopefully are not left with something that's permanent neurological. You had something that was transient. And things that we've tried for akathisia, I'm not saying that any of these were like the gold star, like, oh, we got them all that way, but about 50-ish% of people responded to the NAD infusions, the NAD IVs. That was very, I mean, 50% is still pretty good, right? When you're dealing with a population that can't stand to be in their skin, and the only other thing that, there's nothing else out there to help them. So NAD infusions, and then outside of that, just unpoisoning and poisoning and unpoisoning and poisoning and poisoning. That could even be ozone, you know, that's killing off bacteria and other pathogens, because like maybe that toxicity that you got from the drug was just that tipped it all over from other toxicities that are happening. So anyway, I look forward to more questions on that. Anyone that's had TD out there that has come to any sort of resolution with it, please, wherever you comment, please do comment, because I'd love to hear it. Okay, next question. I was put on antipsychotics even though I was never psychotic. I got very psychotic when I quit. Now I am stuck with Zypahera. Is there anything I can do? Okay, so Zypahera, I don't even know how to pronounce. This is the European version of Zyprexa. So what they're asking when they say Zypahera, Zyprexa is the drug olanzapine, also known as Zyprexa. Now, they're saying they were not psychotic. They got very psychotic when they quit. Okay. Again, the recommendation for whether you were psychotic or not, whether you had a blood sugar problem, whether you were sleep problems, whatever you were put on an antipsychotic for in the first place, including psychosis, that you evaluate how bad was your psychosis in the first place, or were you not psychotic? How long have you been on it? And basically, how high on the roof are you? Are you 2 stories up or are you 10 stories up? And how are you going to jump? Or how are you going to walk down the stairs? Basically. And so number one, you do taper slowly. If you're in that high risk category, you taper even slower. If you've only been on it for 3 days, do you need to taper? No, right? So anywhere in between. But you're saying that you got very psychotic when you quit. I'm assuming you quit, right? That's what I'm getting out of this question. I don't know, over in Europe, they have more time off than we do. Maybe set this time aside a little differently than you have. Like if you're working and you can get more days off than us Americans usually get for this type of grieving, then set aside a space and time to be able to start this process and to see how it starts feeling. So if you're taking 20 milligrams, let's say you drop down to 15 or 17.5, or if you're on 10, maybe drop down to 7.5, Like if you're on 10, I wouldn't go any farther than quarters, 25% drop. If you're at the higher, I wouldn't go more than 25% overall, just as a blanket statement, which is not true for everybody, but it's just a guideline. And reduce that, see how you do. Like, you shouldn't be stuck on an antipsychotic just because you took antipsychotics, right? There's a way back out of this. You probably just might have to do it slower than you did. And try to find yourself on the Alternative to Med Center's Antipsychotic Alternatives page. If you put in Zyprexa alternatives, you'll probably see us on a search engine somewhere in the top 10. And there's information in there that alternatives you can do in addition to tapering slowly. All right, next question. I have been taking Risperidone for about 1 year now. About 4 days ago, I stopped taking it, but I still don't feel better. How much time after I stop taking antipsychotics will I feel better? You are, well, let's say, this is a very, very dangerous question to me because you've been taking antipsychotics for a whole year and you stopped them 4 days ago. You're about in that range where you could end up back in the hospital again. I'm not saying you will or won't, but the chances, if you were a betting person, are not going to be very good. No. You don't rapidly stop an antipsychotic. That's like trying to get out of a car before it stops. You know what I mean? You slow it down and then you get out of the car. You don't just jump out while you're on the freeway. I've been on antipsychotics, I know. There's no judgment here, but all right, so how much time after I stop taking the antipsychotics will I feel better? As a general for, the people that did taper correctly, it could be a bit of a, not a roller coaster ride, but if a person's been on it for 10 years, they can expect they're probably going to be on that for at least a year to some degree. Like 10 to 1, like maybe 1 month for every 12 months they've been on the antipsychotic. But it's not always like, okay, so I felt great for 2 months and then all of a sudden on the 3rd month there was this thing and a failure, No, there's a ride here, and when I don't know much about biorhythms, but they do biorhythms on pilots, where their things all hit at the same time. There's places in our lives that may hit all at the same time, like that they call a perfect storm. And we want to understand that those things are actually happening to us. And, did we not sleep enough? Or did we get a job? Or we're a trucker and we're like suddenly eating out of like convenience stores instead of the healthy stuff we taught you, like what are the storms that are happening and how did those gang up on you to create this situation that you might need to peel yourself back from, even if it means, okay, I have to reinstate medication to punt your ball farther down the field towards the goal line that you're looking for. All right, next question. I'm using a Tallow tablet. What is the last dose in that? I have to confess, I had to look up what a tallow tablet is. It's the way that you call Lexapro or escitalopram over in India, I believe. If that's correct, which I believe it is, the dosing for an American brand medication like Lexapro may be different than the dosing level for how that's packaged in a different country, right? So in this country, Lexapro is like 20 milligrams and down is the usual dosing. So if somebody's coming down off of 20, they might go 15. I'm just giving you a stair-step thing. Might go 20, 15, 10, 5, 2.50, so that last little, you want to maybe extend it out a little bit. And if I read this right, in India, the 5 milligram is your lowest dosing, so you might want to cut that tablet, which you can do easily with tablets, in half, and have that be your last dose is 2.5. But again, each person is different, and if a person's having brain zaps and other inability to sleep, ruminating thoughts, things that are symptomatologies that are not good, then they may want to go slower than that. All right, next question. If someone is on injectables for 2 to 3 months, what is an appropriate way to taper off? If all signs of delusions or psychosis are gone for 1 to 2 months. Oh boy, this is going to be one of those almost unanswerable questions. But, all right, so a lot of times what happens at the psych office, right, is you come in, you're psychotic, they give you an injection, then they keep giving you injections, and by and large, you're fine, right? At least fine as far as the symptoms that brought you into the hospital or whatever. And then you go, wow, do I really need to be taking this medication anymore? Well, how an injectable may work, and different injectables are different. Some of them are meant to last for a week, some are meant to last for a month, some of them may last 3 months, So it's kind of challenging to answer this question, but the appropriate way to taper off is to go onto an oral amount. And the oral equivalents for an injectable might be very confusing to even the best of us, right? So, like, let's say one of the more common ones you might, and one of the more confusing ones, honestly, this might be Invega Sustenna. So let's say you got Invega Sustenna. You got the 1 week shot, which was whatever those are, 117 milligrams, let's say. And then you got the 1 month shot that was 234 milligrams, right? So combine those together and you've got whatever, 300 and, I'm embarrassing myself here, 317, so let's 350, let's just say 350. So about 10 milligrams per day. If you break that 1 month up into days, divided by 30, you're looking roughly around 10 milligrams a day. Okay, so now Invega is also known as paliperidone, which paliperidone is very equivalent to Risperdal, but it's 2 to 1. So paliperidone is the newer version of Risperdal that's twice as strong. So basically, if you're on 10 milligrams a day equivalent of Invega and you are wanting to skip over to oral, you're probably looking at either 5 milligrams of paliperidone or 2.5 milligrams of Risperdal. So if you were put on an injectable of Invega, you probably were scaring somebody, and I would say somewhere between 2 and 3 milligrams of Risperdal might be a good transition point. And you might have to run that. Like, if it were me, let's say, me or my daughter or somebody close to me, and they've got this injectable of Invega, I would probably, and depending on their body weight, if they're a really small person, then I probably wouldn't give them the mid-range dose. I might even go lower than that. But let's say 2 milligrams of Risperdal, right? Get them on 2 milligrams of Risperdal. And if they're too, even more so than they were on the injectable, then that might be okay for a minute, because you really got to get into this thing for a few weeks to know, are they going to flip out from coming off this injectable? But the short answer is you transition over to an oral equivalent of that same type of drug or the same drug, and you step down from there. And I hope you find someone to guide you on that process. I do limited amounts of coaching with people. If you call up the registration staff and you say you want to coach with me, I can hopefully find a doctor with you that can track with all this. All right. So next question. Can CBD be a bridge medication for antipsychotic withdrawal, I'm assuming? And the answer would be yes, yes, and yes. So antipsychotics usually hold back dopamine, but the other stimulatory neurotransmitter that the pharmaceutical company hasn't really made too many drugs for is glutamate. Glutamate's another very stimulatory neurotransmitter. CBD is a glutamate inhibitor. In other words, it's kind of like its own version of low-dose ketamine, let's say. So you're blocking a stimulatory neurochemical, and that's the kind of thing you want when you're going through an antipsychotic withdrawal, is to block that. I've actually seen, I don't know if it, sometimes you don't know what's really happening when somebody's psychotic or not. Like, I mean, if something divine just happened or something like whatever, but you know, I've seen moms give CBD to somebody and they didn't even know it, and like suddenly they're like, "I love you, mom," or they were like punching mom 15 minutes earlier, and CBD was involved. But the other challenge of this is that most people, when I say most, I mean more than 50% of the people, found their way into being psychotic from smoking pot. Like, pot is not as safe as people want to believe it is. It's safe for some people. It's, okay, let me try to put this in one of those meme ways. Marijuana is safe for some people some of the times. And it's safe for most people most of the times. But at a certain dosing level, it's not safe for all people all of the time. And what I mean by that is if you build up your concentration of cannabinoids, the THC specifically, in your physiology to, let's say, 100%, then you're going to be 100% psychotic 100% of the time. How do we know this? Because, these Navy SEALs, the chemical warfare trial people, were trying to, experiment on our enlisted soldiers, that decided to spray in a mock warfare trial THC on the opposing, mock army, and these guys were too batshit to fight. And it's because they were hallucinating, right? THC is a fat-soluble compound. You don't just pee it out. It's not like, this. This will come out of my kidneys, but THC is not going to unless it converts into a water-soluble form. So if you don't have the enzyme to do that, it's going to build up in your system, right? Faster than you're eliminating it. Like, let's say I'm a really fast dealer, and I'm giving you $5, and you're only allowed to give me $1, and I can throw $5 at you and you give me $1. You're going to get some money piled up pretty quick, right? That's the same thing that's happening with THC. Most people are not able to get rid of the fat-soluble drug as fast as they're able to, as fast as it's bioaccumulating in the nervous system. So CBD smells a lot like THC, and people that are using CBD oftentimes go, screw it, let's just smoke a real joint. And that's exactly the wrong thing to do. So what might be a medicine at CBD is going to be probably the thing that caused them to be psychotic in the first place. So navigating that with somebody who has poor choices in the first place and doesn't make good choices as a normative in their life, probably the CBD is going to be something that you want to give in a tincture or in a pill or something that is other than smoking it. Okay, so more on the CBD thing. Like, the thing I hear from people who went psychotic a lot from THC, they say, but THC makes me feel so much better. Smoking pot actually relaxes me. And it's true. It does. It's true. I'm not saying that it doesn't. There's this other effect that's happening, that's churning behind the Wizard of Oz curtain that you don't see because of the physiology, right? You don't see what's happening back here. You don't see what fingers I'm holding up, right? Now, what those fingers look like are you're bioaccumulating a psychogenic compound to a high enough level where it will start producing psychosis, and it will start producing psychosis, and it will start producing psychosis. In other words, it gets to a certain level, and it's going to produce psychosis in me, in you, and it's all a bit of genetic roulette sometimes. But then also you've got these stabs and stuff that are 42% THC. You don't come down from that shit the next day. You know what I mean? You drink alcohol, and guess what? It's out of your system the next day, unless you have a really, really, really unique set of genetic polymorphisms, right? You're not going to be drunk tomorrow, right? You might be hungover, but you're not going to be drunk. It's genetic roulette whether you can clear 42% concentration of marijuana and still not be stoned the next day. And if you're still stoned the next day, or you're having psychosis from THC, you need to stop that shit, seriously. You could end up on antipsychotics and have your whole life ruined because you want to be with the other cool kids or whatever you think is cool about it. There's other ways to sedate yourself and feel okay in the world than ending up in a psychiatric institution for the rest of your life, because it does happen. It does. And I'm not even a teetotaler. I wish, I was a kid too. We had stuff that was like dirt, and I don't even know what it's like to smoke this potent stuff because I just don't like feeling dumb. But I do see a lot of patients, and the first entry question, it's okay. It's like a Jeopardy theme song. It's like dee, 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 and I'm waiting for the thing that's like, oh, there's that tone. So basically, it sounds like this: parent calls me, little Johnny or little Jessica is on antipsychotics, and they were a child. Usually, it sounds something like they were very high aptitude in school. In other words, the high aptitude children are more prone to a less than optimal molecular environment in their brain. They're not the pack mules of our society. They're the sports cars and the jet engines and need a more pristine type of fuel. So, and they started eating like this. It can be one of the branches of deviation, but it usually is one of two things. Or like if I had to nail down 80% of the reasons why people are on antipsychotics, over 70% of those people had smoked pot and then in conjunction with or to the exclusion of, I would say at least 8 to 10% of those people had a blood sugar problem. They're eating too much stuff that wasn't actually real food and having their blood sugar go up, and then they produce too much insulin, they go down below their baseline, which basically is not even hyperglycemia, it's hyperinsulinism. They're producing too much insulin. They go below this baseline and they go crazy below 80, I forget what the units are, let's say micromoles, which is not, but of glucose in their blood sugar. And then when they get down to 55, then they start acting crazy and they end up in a psych ward. So basically it's a missed meal or they smoke too much pot. And if you're giving CBD to someone, you're missing the psychogenic aspect of it. You're not giving us something that has a capacity of being psychogenic, but you're giving them that thing that actually is the calming part of the entire chemical spectrum of a plant like marijuana. It's not an isolate, it's actually a composition of a lot of different other chemicals. And I hope that answered that question. All right, next question. I'm starting to taper, but I'm wondering if I should stop my supplement plan that I was put on by my orthomolecular doctor. It has a lot of B vitamins, and I'm wondering if I should discontinue these B vitamins while I'm withdrawal because I heard they can be stimulatory. Okay. Unlike, let's say, a naturopath, there's a lot of respect that I give to a lot of different denominations, and I also am aware of the constraints. I went to school to be a chiropractor. There's a way that we see the world. Like, you got shot by something, let's give you a chiropractic adjustment, or you took a cyanide tablet, you have a subluxation, let's fix that. I'm being extreme. I'm, what do they call it? Self-deprecating humor. But and orthomolecular doctors usually, unlike your nutritionist or naturopath, they're literally probably going to look through the lens of someone that has come off of that was on psychiatric medication, now choosing to make that transition. I would tend to think you're in good hands, and B1, B2, and B6, as far as B vitamins, are stimulatory. Certain dispositions with B12 can be stimulatory, depends on whether you're an over or under methylator. I think they're going to be aware of all of that, and yet also for psychosis, I don't even see that being as big of a deal as I do B vitamins for somebody that has a generalized anxiety disorder or something, whatever I don't even like the terminology really, but sometimes I have to use it just to communicate, the diag nonsense really. But someone that has anxiety as a presenting feature, and you're giving them B vitamins, you notice it's ramping them up, then you probably want to cut down on the B vitamins, especially if it's an IV. For most people that are coming off an antipsychotic, the B vitamins don't seem to be that consequential. But if you got an orthomolecular doctor there, vis-a-vis, they're probably going to be able to guide you in a good way. All right, next question. I've been on antipsychotics for 6 years. I was addicted to Ritalin. Okay, last year I was addicted to Ritalin 3 to 4 strips a day of 10 milligrams for about 3 months. I didn't get psychosis, I just felt good. I'm stopping antipsychotics now. Do you think it will be fine since I didn't get psychosis with Ritalin? Maybe. So when you're on an antipsychotic, you're blocking dopamine, right? And coffee, Ritalin, cocaine, methamphetamine are actually pushing more dopamine at a drug that's blocking dopamine, right? So it's kind of like, you had both feet on the brake with your car running in front of the garage, and then you step on the accelerator as hard as you can with the other foot still on the brake, and you didn't shoot your way all the way through the back of the garage. You flipped it in there sideways somehow, and you parked it, if I'm hearing this right. That strategy might be fine. When you're on a antipsychotic, you can endure a lot of foibles and misgivings that when you're coming off an antipsychotic, you might not be able to. So it's good that you're no longer on the Ritalin while you're coming off of the antipsychotic, because that's like when you watch the snail try to crawl across the freeway, and you know that there's going to be somebody that's going to run that poor snail over, and it's just a matter of moments. So you don't want to take a stimulant when you're coming off an antipsychotic. Bad juju. If you're not currently taking any type of stimulant when you're coming off antipsychotics, and you already had exposure to Ritalin, you're in a good position to be successful, honestly, because your nervous system is not that fragile. It's kind of like you've been in a slapping contest, and you're still smiling. So I think you're probably going to be all right. Just don't take a stimulant while you're coming off of an antipsychotic, because even a cup of coffee can wreck your day in those situations. And I mean that, I'm not saying that lightly. Next question, is L-Dopa safe to take? Depends on who you are, always, what's safe to take, what's safe to not to take. I mean, there's all these devils that live in the details, and there's all these angels that live in the corners. It's like, it's really a matter of who you are and where on this teeter-totter of neurochemistry you live. If you're coming off an antipsychotic, absolutely do not take L-Dopa. Don't do it. I mean, absolutely, okay, fine. There's this certain segment of people that might have the adverse reaction to that, but literally, this is something that's probably a hard no. Don't take anything that is revving up your dopamine while you're trying to come off of an antipsychotic. Now, later, is it okay for you after you've gotten quite a ways down the field of being off the antipsychotic? For some people, that might be 3 months. For some people, that might be 6 months. For some people, that might be a year. And you're like, lackluster? I mean, I was in and out of psych ward quite a bit from psychosis, And is it safe for me to take L-Dopa now? Yeah. Is it safe for me to drink a half a pot of coffee? I can pull it off. But before, back when, I couldn't. That was the kind of stuff that landed me in the hospital. Now, it's just, maybe I've grown older. My pipes are a little bit dirtier. The compression isn't quite as good when I slam on the accelerator, and I don't get that same, I'm not coming back down to earth feel. So if you're going to do L-Dopa and you've been off of an antipsychotic for a while and you just want to see, you want to take your car out for a drive and see how it does fast, then do it. And then be a good researcher. How did that make me feel? Do I really need to do that every day? Where's the sweet spot for me, Like, I don't know, I saw some comedian that was having this interaction with God, and he's like, God was like, talking about an oil spill, and he's articulating God, like, what did you do? I gave you this beautiful planet and you wrecked it. And he's like, because I wanted to go faster. A lot of times we want to go faster, and really the sweet spot is going slower. It's kind of like on the Star Wars thing or Star Trek, where you go with warp speed and all the stars just go flying by you like at light speed. And did you really see any of the road signs along the way? Did you get to meet any of the culture of any of whatever that was? Sometimes really it's the slowing down that actually puts us in touch with who we are, with what's around us, and then we can move with it rather than trying to go faster than it in the first place. Okay. Question 16. How much lithium orotate is usually helpful for dealing with coming off antipsychotics? Ooh, I got caught as a sleeper on this one because I know that there's a difference between lithium orotate and elemental lithium, and we have a product that's dosed at a certain level, like 60 milligrams, but there's only so much elemental lithium in it. So trying to come up with what's actually not, you're buying somewhere else. I'm just going to say somewhere between 5 and 30 milligrams. It doesn't, how manic were you? That kind of thing. But you're not going to overdose at 30 milligrams, right? Very unlikely. Could it happen? Anything could happen. But 5 to 30 milligrams is not anywhere close to the 1,200 milligrams that you're getting in a lithium carbonate. I don't even know how those necessarily correlate, because lithium orotate may be actually more releasing of elemental lithium than lithium carbonate. But 5 to 30 milligrams, a lot of people, what we're aiming for in the elemental range is between 5 and 20 somewhere. So between 5 and 30 should be okay. Next question. I've used 2 doses of antipsychotics. Do I need to taper off? The answer to that would be very, very, very unlikely. In fact, I wouldn't. Sometimes I don't know how we're going to use these video clips and shorts, but there's just this overall disclosure that I'm not a doctor that's prescribing you medication. I don't know who you are, and So I have to put it in the frame of, okay, if I saw one of my loving family members take 2 doses of antipsychotic, would I, knowing what I know, taper them off? Nope. I would just take them off of it. But again, you also have to look at the lens of like, okay, how psychotic were you? Why were you put on the antipsychotics? If you just come right back off of them, are you going to right back into being psychotic? Were you driving a car at a tree thinking that maybe if you drove it a little bit faster, it might go all the way through the tree? I mean, what was the real were you having straight up psychosis? Sometimes, God, and this was this was a pill for me to swallow, and the whole doing this thing and getting past my own naivety of like, supplements can take the place of all medications. Well, supplements are probably more sustainable, and if you do it right, maybe they, they definitely don't have the toxic byproducts and all that drugs have, but sometimes when you need to hit the brakes, you need to hit the brakes, you need to hit the brakes, and you need to hit the brakes because, the cliff is right there. And if you're driving off, you might need to hit the brakes. So it really depends. Do you need to taper off of it from the neuroadaptive sense of things? No. Do you need to stay on that medication or not long enough to get control of your situation so that you can learn other ways in order to be able to handle the symptomatology that brought you to the place where you got prescribed that in the first place? I don't know. I have no idea. But that's something that you have to inquire within, and you have to talk over with your family, and you have to get, the information and make a decision based on your unique situation. Okay, next question. All right, my sister is looking to get off 4 milligrams of Xanax and 100 milligrams of Amygdala. Which one should she start tapering first? Okay. Generally, the rule is you start with the harder medication and you use the lesser medication as a bridge, right? And these two medications are kind of on the same side of the teeter-totter. They're both trying to increase your inhibitory side of things and decrease your stimulatory side of things. So they're trying to go like this, right? They're trying to bring the inhibitory side up and the stimulatory side down. Lamictal's a lesser medication. It's like a carpenter's hammer in relationship to the sledgehammer of the Xanax, right? So we're not going to hit with the sledgehammer anymore. We're going to hit with the carpenter's hammer, and eventually, hopefully, we can stop hitting altogether and go over here and go, is it okay? So each person is different. Okay, in relationship to which medication to taper first and whatnot. Unfortunately, there's no paint by the numbers. It's like a Rembrandt. You have to know how to paint, you have to use the shadows and everything. But the general brushstrokes look like, as I said earlier, usually the hardest medication goes first, right? And that's the one that you will probably have the most problems with. And the lesser medication is forming a bit of a buffer for taking the waves of the withdrawal and making it more tolerable, right? So in your particular situation, it would generally be the Lamictal would be last. Now, let's say you've been on the Lamictal for 10 years and you just started the Xanax a week ago. Well, you probably would just get rid of the Xanax as quickly as you could and work on the Lamictal, right? Let's say that you got put on, you've been on Xanax for 10 years and you just got put on the Lamictal. That's going to be a wobbler. If it were me and my family or my own person, what I might do, and I say might because this is all going to be, you take this step and how did that work? And you take this step, how did this work, But you might consider just coming back off the Lamictal because you've only been on it for a little amount of time, and then you're withdrawing from the Xanax, right? And if you hit a barrier, you might try to get over that barrier with something like gabapentin or something that's less challenging to your physiology than Lamictal. But let's just say you've got an apple and you've got an orange and you've been on both of the apple and the orange for the same amount of time, and Xanax is the apple, then you probably would want to get rid of the apple first because it's harder to get off of than the orange, the Lamictal, you know what I mean? As far as the class of medications, a mood stabilizer is generally easier to get off of than a full-on benzodiazepine. Okay, next question. 40 years of antipsychotics and antidepressants. Tapering off low-dose Abilify for 5 weeks. Should this be a goal at this time in my life? First off, 40 years on medications is an impressively long time. And for you to have the courage to want to question if this is right for you at this time is noble in many ways. And in some ways, you've probably, some people have climbed the stairs to the roof. You've found, the skyscrapers and things, it might be a little while to get back down those stairs, and it will be an adventure. Like, for some people, life doesn't hold that reward on no medications. Like, as you start tapering your antipsychotics, you're going to get a whole flood of rewarding sensations that might be a fun trip. I'm using those words to try to maybe redraft what the experience might be. It doesn't have to be this shadow of the soul, that took you 40 years and then like all of a sudden it's going to be this hard work where everything's dark, and where's the light? There might be some light that, comes into your life just from a mere reduction of antipsychotic, and that feels good as long as it feels good. Like, hypothetical, let's say you've been on 20 milligrams of Zyprexa for 40 years. I don't even know if they've made that medication for 40 years, but I'm just saying, you've been on antipsychotics for a long time, and currently you're on 20 milligrams of Zyprexa. Maybe going down to 17.5 milligrams of Zyprexa brings you enough, where you're feeling alive again. You feel like there's reward out there in the world, there's a degree of fulfillment. That's kind of like the rush that other people might get when they first wake up in the morning and they're like, oh shit, I'm late for work, I gotta run, and as long as you're feeling that, then maybe that's the sweet spot for you right now, If getting off medication is the goal, then it could be a challenging proposition for you if that's the only acceptable score that you're willing to accept as being the end game. I would think if you've been on antipsychotics for 40 years and you're tapering off, and one of them is Abilify, for 5 weeks, either you've been on it, okay, so I can take this question either two ways. You've either been on Abilify for 5 weeks and you're trying to come off of it, which is not what I think you're saying. Okay, so if you're on low dose Abilify, so I'm going to take it the other way. So I'm going to assume that you are going to try to get off of the Abilify you've been on in the course of 5 weeks. Abilify is an unusual drug. It's what do they call it? It's like a modulator. It's like it's one of the fewer drugs I can think of that actually might be a mood stabilizer, because sometimes it gives you, it just treats dopamine in a somewhat unpredictable way. Usually it's tamping it down, the reward neurochemical. Sometimes it's actually making it more effective at the binding site. So you never really know. The lower doses could actually be more stimulating. But determining for you whether it should be a goal in your life at this time, please don't give people that kind of autonomy over your life. Your goals are your goals. They're not my goals for you. They're your goals. And if you want to take this on as a goal, then own it. Take it on. And be well informed along the way. I don't know what other medications you're on in conjunction with this. If you're only on a low dose Abilify and that's the only thing you're on, then this might be kind of exciting. And I don't know if I would try it in 5 weeks, but it's really your path. If you've gotten yourself off antipsychotics and you're down to this point in your life, I don't know where in the journey you are. So it's actually kind of hard to answer that question, but I applaud you for making that inquisition into your life and being willing to look around for information that provide you with the answer that is your answer and nobody else's answer. All right, next question. Starting to doubt whether or not people with mental illness can give informed consent. The idea behind informed consent is that you're informed of the medication effects and side effects and their likeness. People with mental illnesses cannot properly consent, especially people on psychosis, they say, disconnected from reality, blah, blah, because they're mentally ill. To understand the risks of the medication, to make a proper determination for yourself, that if the unintended side effects do happen, that you can live with them. All that requires a well-working mind, which these people don't have. So how does this system work? You're right. As they said, okay, so the concept of informed consent came out of, I think, the Nuremberg trials after the Nazi doctors were doing things to patients that they didn't want to have done, and the basis of humanity said that, okay, people have to consent to the treatment that they're being given. Now, of course, that was a pretty needed response to a very archaic sort of thing that happened in the world. Let's do whatever to you what we want. You don't have to agree to it or not. So is it really refined enough to actually give consent? I mean, how it looks in a psychiatrist's office, outside of, did you come into the emergency room in the back of an ambulance and they need a surgery and you're unconscious, okay? Let's just take that completely out. Let's, in the realm of mental health, are you able to give consent for what is listed on the insert of that medication. For those people who do not speak Korean or Chinese, I'm going to ask you a question. Ni hao ma, zhen chao. Now, what did I say? I'm not even exactly sure what I said, honestly, but if that whole informed consent was in a language that you did not understand, do you think that qualifies as informed consent? Like, no, like if you have the CYP 2D6 genetic polymorphism and you take this antipsychotic, you may end up with a permanent neurological disorder called tardive dyskinesia. And you're talking to God in the trash can, okay? Did you really get informed consent? Well, of course you didn't. You know what I mean? Of course you didn't. And for us to think differently is an organized system of horsepacky that could, in some substantive way, qualify as racketeering, honestly. So your answer, that, as I see it, would be no. Now, what is the solution to this? Well, like any other solution that is encompassing all of humanity, there's never, that I'm aware of, a positive yes or positive no. I mean, if you're talking about should we have oxygen in our atmosphere, yes. But as far as like defining the totality of human behavior or human spirituality and what is black and white there, for just debate purposes, try to define what statutory rape means. Like over here in this state, if a person's 15, another person's 17, and then one of those two people turns 18 and the other one's 16, they had a cute relationship before that, and then after that, maybe one of the parents gets mad, and then their cute relationship ends up with incarceration for this person, and they get killed because they're considered a pedophile in the prison system, which is likely, if not the norm. And over here in this state, and with this family, that same family those two kids had kids, and those kids had kids, and there's this whole tree of happy family that is in football, and they're, they have jobs and careers and people that depend on them and everything. Like, and where do you draw the line? Like, because obviously there is a line there of what rape is, and there's obviously but where exactly, fundamentally, would that line be to apply to everybody? Well, it's not there. It's based upon situationally, and the judge having the latitude to be able to say, well, this was wrong and this was right. They were kind of independent of certain hard stops, So the answer here is complicated. To have a shared decision-making process with someone who is not currently in their executive mind is always going to be a gray area, Like, I remember one time there was a patient who the doctor had prescribed a medication for her, and she was screaming at the ceiling fan, "Are you God?" Strangely enough, the ceiling fan dropped out of the ceiling. It was kind of freaky, but it's like she was escalating because she had made a hard determination that she was not going to take her medication, and she was suffering from that. But in one sort of I don't know, it's not really a Chris Angel thing, but a medication was given to her, like, here, take this, it could help with that. And then she put it in her mouth, she took it. It's a medication she had already been taking before that she had informed consent of. Like in that situation, was there really shared decision making? Not quite, you know what I mean? It's hard to really gauge, but could that save the person's life? Yes. Is the person already accustomed to taking that type of medication? Yes. So the value proposition is there's a lot more value in that than there is consequence. Now, when you're tying someone down and you're force injecting them something that could permanently rip their nervous system apart, what's the value proposition there, and how do you convey that to a psychotic population? I mean, unfortunately, we as American citizens, at least, I know there's other people that watch this from different other countries, but in our way of having set things up, we have person running around on the streets out of their mind. A lot of people have guns over here, so they might get shot. They're probably going to be seen as a threat, and it's very bad. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of tolerance for someone who is experiencing mental health symptoms. Very few people go up to them and go, hey, come with me, we're gonna help you, let's get you a meal, like that's just, we're not, Latin American countries are much more oriented like that than we are here, right? So we don't have the ideal scenario would be to, or at least, like I said, there's no ideal scenario, but a scenario that might be more appealing to me would be, okay, that person's gonna jump off a cliff, we need to, you, me, and Dave over here need to put that person in a place where they can't hurt themselves. So here's the hopefully well festooned with, beautiful things, rubber room, let's say, and here's some organic food, and let's sit down, let's talk about it. Maybe I can sit here, maybe I have to sit way over here, maybe I even have to sit out here, but let's try to talk through this. Let's have some open dialogue about what's going on with you, or something, but let's have a situation where you can't hurt yourself and you can just eat food that actually makes your brain work and stop doing whatever drugs you may have been doing that got you into that situation. But we don't live in that type of, there's not that option. So right now what we're stuck with is, do we let our loved one run around out there knowing that this could be bad and that we will suffer the guilt of it as their loved person? Or do we let them go into this situation where they're going to get forced and also share the guilt of that, whether it hurts them or not? Maybe they're going to hate us for this situation. So that is a very, very complicated question in this society, and I would strongly advocate for the shared decision making where and when possible. And sometimes, like when we're taking people through this, right, they're coming off antipsychotics and then they're in our care, we draft up something ahead of time that is informing them of the actions that will happen if they start to spin out. First thing, they choose, before any of this happens, they're choosing someone that they will listen to unequivocally. If the group says, this is the one person you've said you trusted, and you will take their direction and not question it. Because when you get into those situations, you don't make good decisions. And very rarely does that actually work, right? Rarely does that actually work. But a person in psychosis, when they come back out of psychosis, they remember everything that happened. They remember you said, okay, you said you'd take Dave's, direction, and you're not taking Dave's direction or Danielle's or whoever's direction, and remember this, right? You signed it. Sorry, bud. It's providing them with as much disclosure and informed consent that they gave that consent to when they were feeling good about their ability to be able to do so. All right, and that is the end of the YouTube questions that we got. I do want to remind people that don't take medical advice from people you're talking to or think you're talking to on YouTube. This is information. The information that I have for you is based upon seeing a residential population for, at this juncture, 18 years, and making some determinations that most outpatient doctors don't get to see, right? Somebody prescribing, come back in 2 weeks. They don't know what water you've been drinking, what person you had an argument with, or whatever. And by and large, we've controlled a lot of variables around that to focus in some really good information, but still, we don't know who you are as where your life has been and what is really real or true for you. Only you knew that. And again, don't change any medications based upon what you've heard from us, or even supplements. You might want to get them a practitioner even on those supplements before you start taking something that you have not been prescribed by someone. I do understand that there's not a lot of doctors that can guide you through this, and there's not even a lot of natural type-minded people that can guide you through this, and so you might have to experiment. I get that. But just know that we're not allowed to prescribe. We're not allowed to give medical advice through YouTube. All right, thank you. Have a very nice day or evening, and hope to see you on the next video.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. For information about Alternative to Med Center, give us a call at 888-984-9667.